Ayin Beis, Volume 1, up to chapter 118. Page 228, Discourse 30, My Chanukah. And we're in the middle of the discussion, or the second half of the discussion, the second end of the discussion, and the third interpretation of Sphira from the word Even Sapir, from the expression Even Sapir, which began all the way back in chapter 104. Now we're at 118. And that was explained through the word of Sapir as in brilliance, as in brightness. So it's a transparent channel, a transparent channel of expression, which is the highest interpretation of spheres, because it completely, transparently allows the flow of the energy to go through it. So in this last chapter, 117, discussing Even HaSapir, based on the Kabbalah, Pardes, and the Meir Eir, is literally is Malchus as it receives from Chochmah. So to explain what is Chochmah, this past chapter discussed it in the context of colors. Chochmah is the colorless color. Let's put it this way, uncolored. So he says, Psichas Kol HaGvanim is the opening of all colors and allowing them all to manifest. So we could think that there's two ways to learn that. You could say it's the opening all colors, it's a color, but it's a klal, it's a all-encompassing color, and all other colors emerge from it. That's one way to interpret it. But based on another pardes, that there's two ways to interpret the original pardes, Ayin Beis in Shar HaGvanim, the gate of colors. But in Perek Hey, he says Chochmah Ein Bo Gavin. Once he says it has no color, like from the Tikkun Ezer, then he says you can't interpret it as a klal and prat. You can't say it's a color that encompasses all the colors. You have to say it's a state that's between color and no color. It's not completely no connection to colors, as we discussed. That's Kesed and beyond. But you have to say it's what he calls Ein Gevin L'Gevin. Basically, it's a place between Ayin and Yesh. So we discover a new particle. Among the subatomic spiritual particles, we find a new particle. That's not color, and it's not color. And he gave the example of stained glass, where you have many different colors, but you need to have you need to have a light that shines through them for you to see them. Now that light does not create the colors. The colors are there already. But they're not emerging until you have this level, which is called Chochmah, that radiates and shines through it. So then, in Kain, as he says, that the colors come from within Chochmah, from within that level. Rather, the way he explains it, that it's through it that it gets revealed, not that it emerges from there, it gets revealed through there. That's the Chiddush here. I looked around for sources. I think I couldn't find anywhere in Chassidus that says this before. So it could very well be the Rebbe Rashab's,
What you need, it gets revealed from it?
No, this Chiddush, because the way the interpretation in the Pardes. In other words, looking at both Pardes and coming to this conclusion that there's this in between place. Chassidus talks about Gevin Poshet, which we're going to learn in the next chapter, about white being a Gevin Poshet, meaning a colorless color, or beyond shape and definition. But it doesn't talk about. But this I didn't find it. Doesn't mean it's not there. I in my first search, I didn't find it.
What are the words again exactly?
Read it right here. It says here. Eina Dover Kain. It's not that it's the top of the page. Reish Chav Zayin. This is not my interpretation. This is what he says specifically. Page 227. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me just go through the summary here a second. And then with this he explains, in other words, you see, if Chochmah, if this color has a color, and it has some element of color, you can leave that alone, by the way. I made it that it's fine. You don't have to even touch it. If it has some type of color, so in Aveda, it says there's a colored intention. So there's a big power here. So then he goes on to explain, push it physically, that when you have a white color, it brings out by contrast all other colors. If someone wants to see red, let's put it back even more. If you want to see the color red properly, you need to have a white backdrop. If you have any type of colored backdrop, you won't really see the color for what it is. Which in truth, you have to think of it like this, that all space is really, therefore, neutral. Because how do you know you're seeing the color, this color pink? Maybe it's because you have to say the contrast. Because if this was giving off red light, you wouldn't know the color of this. You could completely be confused. You ever go into a colored lit room? You can't know the real colors of things. So you have to say that, so to speak, the invisible space that is the backdrop of everything we see is colorless. Now you could argue maybe it's not. Maybe we don't really see real colors. But if you see it begashmis in a white thing. If you want to bring out a color, however, as he says, if the backdrop or the color that's coming into the room, it's either way. It could be the backdrop, the white backdrop, or it could be what color is there originally, will taint and distort the color that is entering. Both ways, actually. So that's the point. So this level has no color. Now, is this not necessarily a proof that the color white is not a color? Because you could say, you know what, white is a color that allows all other colors to emerge. So I don't know if physics and physical things you can bring proof from that. You can say, if I paint something white just has that ability that is neutral, so to speak. It doesn't mean it's not a color, but he's going deeper here. He's saying it's actually not a color. Because if you say it's a color, we're back to then what's the whole chiddush here? He wants to say that it's not a white color from which all other colors emerge. Addressing your question, I thought about it yesterday.
It's not white, it's like a crystal color.
I'm just saying, but let's say, how do you know? The mere fact that it brings those other colors to see them lamitasam doesn't necessarily mean that it's not as colorless. That's what I'm saying. That's not a proof. Because you could say, you know what? It's a color that's white or clear, whatever you want to call it.
Leo.
Yeah, but there is a havamin. Remember, his consideration was that clear is also a color, and it's the root of all colors. That was how you could have interpreted it. I'm just saying from the physical, I don't know if you have proof of that. You could say it's a clear color. It doesn't have to say it's not a color. My understanding is one of two ways in the question about the prism. One is you could say that takib pshat, a prism has no color. The reason that in other words, light fundamentally has no color. Not that it's clear color. It has no color. And that's why when you look, for example, without a prism, what do you see? Tell me the color of daylight. What's the color of daylight? What's the color even of a flame? There's no real color. Unless the bulb has a color, the light has no color, you can say. When you put a prism, it's not that the white has all the colors in it. You could say that there are colors that, well, how would you explain that? Where would the colors come from? Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know that you'd have a problem because in physics, the problem, I understand, I'm not a physicist, but I have to look into it. It seems to me that white has all the colors in it, and the prism, by bending the light, the colors emerge. Yeah. So at first I was going to interpret a little different. I was going to say that the light on its own has no color, but when you bend it, colors emerge. Where are they coming from? So you have to say they're coming from somewhere else. I don't know if you could really say that. But either way, I have the second interpretation, which definitely fits here. He's talking here higher than physics. He's talking one level above the prism. In other words, there's a level, like how do colors come into existence? If Ani Hashem Leishanisi, like he says, God is colorless. Color is a definition. Definition immediately means structure. And the divine definitely has no structure. Not space, not time, not colors, not shape, like we said, all the different things. So, what you're establishing here is that there's a place where first it goes from complete ayin, beyond everything, into a world of chokhmah, which is essentially uncolored, but it's in the world of colors. And that will allow the colors of chokhmah, bina, chesed, and gvura to emerge. I was just wondering whether you could say the same thing in the prism. You could say maybe the white light, or the clear light, is like beyond color, but then where the colors come from. The colors, in other words, are somewhere in existence, and by bending the light, it appears differently than this. Bending the light appears like the first interpretation. And the light has it like a klal prat, except you can't see it until you bend it. And the interpretation he's going here is that it doesn't have it. It's there on its own, but you can't see it until the light shines through it. So I think it may be different. It may be a step above, but that's why I'm answering the question. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah.
Klal prat, you would say the Koran Hashmas looks that way.
Yeah. And that's not a stid. He's not just talking on that level. He's saying there's a deeper level above that. That's not a problem. It's not a problem to say, just like there's a world of no color, like, wisdom doesn't have a color. Like I said, ideas. There's a world where it's not yet yesh, but it's the beginning, it's the seed of what's going to come later.
And another level, it does contain all of that.
You could probably say, remember at the end, he did say that Chachma is Chachma, the higher part of Chachma, there's the lower part of Chachma. So it could be the higher part of Chachma is more like Keser. Remember he said it here at the end of this chapter. Maybe that's how one can interpret it. Let me continue the summary. Let's see this 1 second. So White brings out, what is this in Aveda? In Aveda goes like this. That when you're serving God, when you're connected to you can be connected for a good intention, which is you want to get closer, and you appreciate the gili of Elokus in your life. So that's already colored. It's a good intention, and it's a true intention, but it's not the truth of real mitzvah. Truth of real mitzvah is that it's the divine desire, not because it's achieving something. Achievement is already a colored element in it. It could be a good color, there could be bad colors.
Even if it's a good achievement.
Yeah. In other words, so the root, so the lamitose, you want to know the amitis of what a mitzvah is? The amitis of a mitzvah, of every mitzvah, no matter how different they are, tzedakah and so on, the amitis is seen in the contrast of pure Aveda. That's why he says it's Yesod Kol Haveda, the foundation of all, the whole binyan hagdusha. That's the words he used. There's a foundation, is this govern that is lamayla of color, Gavin Lovan, as he says.
Which you said this is already also a color.
No, I said it's not a color. That's exactly the point. It's not a color. She says it's not a color, and
it's a level of lower.
Lower than what?
They add some shit.
Yeah, it's in the world of existence, but bottom line, in the structure, we have something that has no color. So in Aveda, that is the foundation of everything, and that brings out. So you can give tzedakah because you're getting something from it. You feel good, and so on. That's already the color of tzedakah. But the true nature of tzedakah, the true color, if you want the true understanding of it, is the pure thing. Yeah. The interesting thing in Aveda, it's even deeper than regular, because here you were saying you want to know the true color of red. Remember, you said, so that's red. The true color of red is not white, is not clear, it's red. Here he's saying the true color of red is really, remember we said it's both things. It's tzedakah, but it's still the true meaning of it is that it is the Ratzon Elyon, and that's it. Because deeper than the color, because basically, remember we discussed this, the true color of red is red, or the true color of red is clear. So in the physical example, a clear environment or a clear backdrop brings out the true color of the thing. Here he's going in Aveda, it's even deeper. He's saying that not only are you doing the Aveda because of clear, it's also the real truth of that color. He's going a step further.
So how did it become red?
No, because the same Elokus wanted the Ratzon, he wanted this. We talked about this point, that's why.
Just, do you mind 1 second? I just don't get it a little bit. Why not just say that the pshitos, the non-color, as you call it here, carries all of this? It's possible in physical terms. What is this? That the substance doesn't let through a certain frequency, and that frequency, this is the red color. And if it doesn't let through blue or green, that's what you really see. So the kele brings out from this pshitos, the non-color, this certain frequency. But it is noisy. That's what I don't get a little bit.
Well, first of all, it says beferish otherwise. It's the first thing. The Pardes says not that.
Lines on lines.
You could say that. He says you could. That's why I began. You could say that on your own, but from the Pardes, it's clearly not that. That's number one. That's the basis of that.
Even
Even without eyes, the eyes are going to say
That
so.
brings this to me. Who's bringing me this? that specific color?
God created. Who created animals? Why is a dog different than a cat? No, I'm asking you a question. Why is a dog different than a cat? The dog and cat are included in the air? No, they're not. No, absolutely not.
So
who says? Who says God? Just Shem Sheyesh Lekecha Bebuilt Gagul Kech Lekech Begul. So he chose.
But isn't
one God?
The gvul being carried by the bli gvul?
Carrying the kelim. Not necessarily. You can interpret it otherwise. That's what you can interpret. Not necessarily. Who says so? Listen, the Sheirish HaKelim is not from the air. The Kelim are not rooted in the air. The air just bring them out. What's that? The body comes from the soul. If you want, I can make a total complete arpsa. The soul doesn't create the body. The soul brings the body out. That is, like he says in the Pasuk Eliyahu. Now the air is leave. It's kegufa b'lei nishmasa. Ishtara kegufa b'lei nishmasa. If the soul created the body, then as soon as the soul leaves, the body should die. The Kelim don't come from the Eris. They emerge from the Eris. The Eris is the process. Just like the paintbrush doesn't create the colors. In other words, bottom line is like this. There's energy that comes from the divine, and there's identity. The energy is being told by the source, I want these identities to emerge through you. But they're not rooted in the air. So you could make the case the other way around.
Well, the bottom line is everything is believable. That's why it is.
I don't know what that means. That doesn't make sense to me. That God created a world.
There's no limitation.
What do you mean? There's a God created the structure where a shear of when you eat, if everything's blig vul, then you can daven shachris middle of the night.
That's why he's having the gvul.
What do you mean?
Otherwise, if you're saying that he's having the gvul,
one second. I'm not talking now. I don't know what you're saying. The same God that is one created a multitude of existence. That's a fact of life. He created a world with diversity. Diversity is not an illusion. It's not our imagination. It's not a magic trick. It's actual structure. We learned here hundreds of pages almost how Gvul is a creation of God, and it's rooted in a Keyach HaGvul, that God wanted Shir Atzmi B'Keich. He wanted exactly like this. 2 different mitzvahs. There's 613 mitzvahs. There's Asar Ma'amoris. There's diversity in this world. The question is, how do you join that?
It's not the reality.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Everything is Hashem.
So now you're talking, first of all, you're asking questions that are out of the scope of this thing. I don't know what you're saying. So Hashem, the same.
Something I don't understand.
Okay, so this is why we learn Chassidus.
Hashem created everything, and it's a real thing. What Yichud Elah means that it's not the real thing, the way that we see it.
I never heard this before. What Bereshis Bara is an illusion?
Explain it.
Is existence when you do a mitzvah when you make a bracha on a piece of bread, is this an illusion or a reality?
The reality is that this piece of bread is a lokus.
So why do you have to make a bracha? Why do you have to make a bracha? Why do we have mitzvahs? Why does the neshama come down to this bracha?
Once in the way that we see it, we should recognize that.
So, but what we see is real. So when we do it, are we accomplishing something, or it's just a game?
So what do you say?
Absolutely, we're accomplishing, because who you're limiting God. Who decided that God can't create a world of diversity? You're making it like God can't create a world of diversity. He could. That's the Avedis HaKedesh. Kashem sheyesh lekeich b'bilti b'gvul, kach yesh lekeich b'gvul. That's the bottom line. Anyway, we're going now to Ayin Beis.
This is very confusing. This is something that I don't understand. Because if you say that Hashem is bli gvul,
no, who said Hashem is bli gvul? Where did you get this word bli gvul? This word bli gvul is your creation.
Yeah, he's not bli gvul.
He's beyond everything. Nothing would be existing without him, right? Or not?
And so what does that have to do with anything?
So you said that there is an existence.
So read Shari Yuchid V'Amunah, Hein Hein Gvuresav, the same God has the power to conceal his presence and allow another entity to emerge. There's my mother. This is the whole Chassidus is this.
Next parent talks about this.
It's not the parents. The whole foundations of Chassidus is this. The bottom line is you're limiting God by saying that he's bli gvul. Doesn't say he's bli gvul. He's beyond bli gvul is also a description. So now God created existence. We all agree on this? Correct? No, Bereshis bara Elokim. What do you mean? Okay, it's not my opinion.
No, I hear that, but it's not clear for me.
Bereshis bara Elokim is clear to you?
Yeah.
So that's the one. That's the first thing. The Torah says the same God that you're talking is beyond everything, created existence. Okay? This existence, if is revealed, the divine would not be able to be able to emerge. So there's a tzimtzum. God concealed. Do you understand that how God can conceal Himself?
No.
Okay, so that's where your problem is. So that's what you got to figure out. How can God conceal His presence?
I have no problem with that.
You don't have. I thought you said you don't understand.
No, I don't understand how could be.
I just asked you. Let's take one step at a time. Do you understand that God can conceal Himself?
Yeah.
And it's a true concealment?
To us, not to Him.
Fine, but for us.
Yeah.
But we are reality. And since from us it's a true concealment, Golus, is it true Golus? Does God cry in Golus? Shchinta begalusa, is there such a thing?
The way that I understand, the way that we see it.
Wait a
Not
minute.
the way that it
So-
is really.
So let me ask you a question. If Mashiach comes, does it have anything for God? Does God have anything from it? It's only the way we see it. For him, Gula.
He's having a nachas ruach from this
And-
way that what we feel.
What difference does it make to him? If it's the same thing, Golus and Gula is the same thing. What difference does it make to him? I'm asking you a question. How do you understand that?
The Savel is that.
Well, but don't say words. You just said that to him there was nothing concealed, so there's no Golus. So what happens when Mashiach comes? With God, no difference? Only because He's happy, His children are happy? That's what you're saying? The children who are blind and don't see reality? Okay.
I'm only saying that I don't understand.
No, so I will tell you like this. It's not for the scope of this discussion. This is fair discussion. You bring up many times things. Does not belong here. This is a different discussion. Since I'm learning Ayin Beis. You want to discuss it? I'd be happy to discuss it another time. And I'll show you which sikhs to look at. This is talked about very directly. This is, I'm not shocked because I don't know how many people do understand
No,
it.
because this is something that.
Okay, but you heard what I just said to you? I cannot go through whole Chassidus in one page here. This
That's
is
opportunity.
the opportunity. No, if you really care, call me up.
I understand.
Why many opportunity? When you're learning something, I have to go to another Masechta because it's an opportunity. There's a Gemara about that. It's a Gemara Masechta. It's a legitimate question, but just for the record, there is discussion about this. You have to remember, Keil Deus Hashem, what you call Yichud De'Elah, reality of God, Das Tachton is also God's De'ah. It's not just Das Elyon. You're trying to limit God. That's what you're trying to do. You can't understand how God can look at it from our perspective and it should be real. By you, it's like, because your seichel is limiting you. So the bottom line is your seichel is limiting you from understanding this. Anyway, the bottom line is to go back to where we were here.
You're not shocked by it because it's not a market.
No, because we say a lot of words without really thinking about it. These are legitimate questions. I'm not saying the question is not legitimate. It's just a question where you discuss it and when you discuss it. Anyway, the truth is that I discussed it already almost every class you've been here. You're just not listening to what we're saying because you're thinking about something else. We discuss this all the time. We discuss the reality of existence. Existence is real. That's the bottom line.
But always, I understood it in such a way that this is the way that.
But you're saying what you understood, you don't understand. So I understand. You understood it or you didn't understand it?
I didn't.
No, so you're telling me you understood it. So maybe what you understood, you didn't understand. So let's start with that. No, you're telling me you understood it a certain way. You heard something today new, different.
No, this is an opportunity.
I know. You always had this question, so you never understood it. So let's start from there. Okay. My point is, if you didn't understand it, so then you have to focus on what your question is, and guarantee you'll get the answer from what we're learning. Because this is the whole point of the whole Ayin Beis. All of Chassidus comes to address this issue.
Can I just ask one question, please?
One second, let me just finish my summary here because I'm going to go back my train of thought here. Okay. Anyway, the bottom line is he asked the question, but then he left. It's fine. So the bottom line is that the Pardes, Pei K, makes it very clear. So he says here. Because he says, Ayin Beis govern. That's a lashon. Leitofes, Shem Havai Leitofes Bei govern klal.
He has an eye also.
Leishtane b'shum govern klal. Aval hu ayah shaydei is galah govern. The raya, as I told you, the physical from the physical. I don't know if you could bring a proof from that. With the colored glass. Yeah, but that's not the raya. That's the pshat in Pardes.
But this is also
What's the raya?
Because if it has all the colors in it, So then it's not the actual color. It's not. It's tainted a little bit.
No. You can't bring a proof from that. You could say that the color white has all the colors. This is how physics sees it, and when you bend it, it's revealed. You could say that.
But then
I don't think you can bring a proof.
Clouded because of that other.
Doesn't matter. So it's clouded. Who says that? So what's the problem with that?
So he's trying to say that.
What's saying? Was that a proof? So say that. Who says that's a
actual red that you're seeing? There's a little bit of.
Who cares? So maybe you're not seeing actual red.
Right.
So
and he's trying to say
no, but what's the proof? There's no proof.
That's proof that it's clear and colorless.
How do you know?
So therefore, you're seeing.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're not seeing actual red and actual blue. That's what a scientist may say. There's no proof from a prism. I don't think there's a proof from that.
No, but in Ruchnius, he wants to bring out that you're seeing the actual.
But that's not a proof. I understand. That's what I've been saying. But I can't say it's a proof. If the Pardes didn't say what he said, I don't know if you can necessarily. In Aveda, of course, in Aveda there's an element of no color. I understand Aveda.
I see what he's trying to say. Okay, I see, and I see what you're saying also. That it's no proof.
No. The question is where you're getting it from. What's the source of it? That I understand that in the whole picture of things, it makes more sense that there was no color at all. Then there's a state of in colors itself, no color. Then comes the next state. Anyway, bottom line is that I was leading up to that's Naveda. Then he goes back and says this is the same thing as in Chachma, Shemavdal's be'erech, Shein be'gevin, but through it all the colors emerge. Fine. So Chachma is like this type of interface between a place, like he says, Yeshlem Shzeh Mashakosam Ayin Gevin Legevin. We're not talking about a state where there's absolutely beyond the whole existence of colors. We're talking about in the world of colors you have this level here. Okay. He said it's like a shimach kika. The shima means you just make a scratch, and which is only like an impression, and then it develops. So he said that's in Kalim, an outline, okay. And then in Eidus, says Yeshem, the same thing as in Eidus. Okay. Now, I think here at the end, this is what I want to say. You got the answer to your question? What do you mean? I just told you a neshama doesn't come from a guf, doesn't come from a neshama.
It is, but I just
What?
reconcile it with my.
So maybe your this is not right. I just told you, does a guf come from a neshama? Does a keli come from air? The keli doesn't come from air. So why does a color have to come from air? A color can come. It's kreich hagvul. As a matter of fact, you could even say that's based on the two opinions in spheres. Does the energy have in it spheres? Does the air have spheres? Does the air have color? So you could argue the air doesn't have color, which is a very strong opinion in Mukabalim, that air has no color. And the color comes from the kelim.
But isn't it the muskana that air is mitzuyorim?
Mitzuyorim doesn't mean color, by the way, just for the record. Not necessarily.
That's why I make a mistake.
Well, we can discuss it. But there's no question there's an opinion that there's no color. And the Pardes is actually that opinion, that there's no color. He's the one that gives the example of clear liquid in tinted glasses. So if you put water in blue glass and red glass, is there blue and red in the water? So that's an opinion. That's a clear, you see right there, that color doesn't come from the object. It comes from the receptacle. Now, it's true that the opinion, but he's going with Ayin Beis, is that also in air there is tziyur. So I would say...
He's choosing this opinion from me.
No, first of all, he's in the middle of the discussion. He's talking Evan Sapir. It's one part of spheres. He doesn't talk on other parts. Remember, all is true. At the end of the day, there's an element of air that goes all the way to Bligvul. Remember, air, you say air is Mitzrayim. Air Mitzrayim is once it's Shir Asma B'Keach. There's a state of Bligvul. Spheres saying Ketz. For sure there's no color. Obviously, the objective is, let's talk the Havan of it. The objective of the whole interface is to connect Gvul and Bligvul. Is to connect a world of structure and colors and shapes and images and all that, tziyur, with built-in tziyur. The question is only one question. Where exactly does one go over to the next? That's the question. But that there's definitely both elements. That the divine is beyond any structure is definitely true. That Atzmus is beyond even that is also. We're not talking about Atzmus now. We're talking about how Atzmus chooses to create the structure of existence. So there's two parallel paths, right? That's called the Bligvul path and the Gvul.
Two passes, two channels.
Absolutely. Eira Gvul, Eira Bligvul. Sevev Kalalman, Mamala Kalalman. Okay, now, 1 second. We want the joining of the two. So initially, like you said, all in the beginning of the Hemshech, you could begin by saying that Atzilus is Yesh Ma'ayin or Gilia Helam. The answer is depends, Kalim or Eiris. If you talk the Kalim are Yesh Ma'ayin, that's the path of Gvul, a finite of structure. Eir is the path of Bligvul. That's the simplest way to say it. But, as we discussed many times, there are a lot of problems in the unity, where Eir and Kalim meet, on whose terms is it? Is it a divine Bligvul terms, or is it a Kalim's Gvul terms? And how they not compromise each other? You see? So the answer is that also Eir has in it Tzir. And also Kali has in it Eir. We just read Pnimis HaKalim. Hold on, no, one second. So now we've determined that also the Eiris of Atzilus have an inyan of Yesh Ma'ayin because they have, and the Kalim have an inyan of Gilia Helam. Bottom line is that even though they are two paths, they get closer now because the air, even the energy has in it some type of, let's even say, color. Okay.
And the air knows what the kavanah is.
Yeah, the air knows the kavanah. But still, it's the Kali that brings out the identity of it. Okay, fine. Now, as we move closer, you go even in the spheres themselves. We talk difference between Chachma and Malchus. We said the Kalim are dominant in Malchus. As you go higher in Atzilus, it's also levels. So it's not just a black and white thing. Every level gets closer. As you go higher, a little more air, a little less Kali, and so on. So there's a constant process. And there's many, many steps in this. There's no one, you're not going to have one simple solution. Every level has its own particular, let's call it ingredients, ratio, proportion of Eir and Kali, so to speak. Let's call it of divine and the structure. I mean, divine non-structure and divine structure. Make sense? Okay. Now he began the whole thing about 3 levels in spheres, or 3 interpretations. And now he's talking, Evan Sapir, he's saying how Malchus is connecting to Chachma. So we're not talking about Malchus alone. What's Chachma? So Chachma is the place that has no color. So you could say maybe it has no color means that's in there, but it's not revealed. Klal and Prat. And he says no. No color means Kipshute, no color. It has no shape. You're asking, as we said, spheres have shape? Well, first of all, maybe Chachma is a taste of the level of spheres that is beyond shape. And maybe Bina is where the colors begin. That's how he's saying here. Obviously, at the end of the day, he's going to say somewhere that Chachma probably also has. Remember, L'fierach Keser, Chachma is Yesh. So at the end of the day, even if you say Chachma is no color, it's still a colorless color. It's just that the colors themselves don't come from Chachma. So in other words, let me put it to you more in Aveda Dikasis. If you say Chachma is a Klal Prat, then we don't have in the world of structure the bittul of doing something completely only because God wants it. It has to have some color. If you say Chachma is higher than Klal and Prat and does not have in it colors, so even in the world of spheres, Chachma can introduce into Malchus and to the spheres the idea of doing something for no, even not for the kavana, the colored kavana of doing it because you're getting close to godliness. You heard what I just said?
Yeah.
That's the key. Now,
Why can't we say that's the job of Kesser?
because Kesed is not in existence. That's why he said at the end of the Maimer, he said, Pnimius Abba brings it at least in Hamshacha. Kesed is not in a state of Hamshacha. Kesed is Amunah.
The lower part of Kesser, let's say.
So everything, yes, so later on he's going to discuss how Arich has a role. No, it's different things. We're talking the world of Giluyim. Chachma's role is in the world of conscious spheres, which Arich is already in the unconscious state. Moiches Tema is where you already start talking about Arich. Look. It's a very complicated process. It's like you ask me a question when someone, let's say, has a, God forbid, a surgery, and they connect, the doctor is doing, let's say, heart surgery, and he connects three arteries. Okay, why does he have to connect the 4th one? Because everyone has its role. Every one of the steps of the interface plays a role. Let's remember, he spoke earlier, the effect of the makifim. The makif of Tirilah has its impact, the makif of Ak has its impact. Everything has its impact. And at the end of the day, if you really want to understand this well, obviously you want to compare what is Chachma, what would be like if you only had the interface of Kesed and you wouldn't have the interface of Chachma. It's a legitimate question. But you do know that every one of them plays a role, or else God, we wouldn't need it if not. You're right. There's a tzricha for every step. There's 100%. I try to discuss it as we go. Remember yesterday when I gave the whole summary, so I said, 2 days ago, that after what we learned, that the Makifim give the power of Mesiras Nefesh and Bittul, the Pnimim give the Nekuda, and Yaakov comes and adds a dimension that lifts Malchus up to the highest level. So, everything has its role. Now life is complex. There's no one solution to it all. We have to realize that when you're dealing with a human being, trying to get from here to here, it's not one magic pill. There's different steps in the way, and everybody needs a different vitamin. Just like different foods we eat for different times, that's why we have a whole year. There's things you do on Hanukkah, there's things you do on Pesach, there's things you do on Yom Kippur. Why not just, they're all about connecting to God. Connect to God, because we're diverse. Since we're diverse, each holiday, each mitzvah connects another wire, so to speak. Same thing is with the Sfiris. Avram does his job, Chesed, Yitzchok his, Yaakov his. Now we're talking, in this right now, we're really talking about how Chochmah is the Even Sapir. Even Sapir is basically the level that's introducing Bittul, I would say. A real Bittul. The colorless, an uncolored Bittul into the structure of Aveda. That's what he's saying here. Which is why it's so important for him to emphasize this. I agree, it's completely because of the Aveda. But now, if you'd go, now I think, when you read the end of the chapter, you see something very interesting. Right at the end, he says like this. First, he gave the example that in Kalim you also have these two states. The Rishim and Chkik is an example. When you make first an impression or an outline, just a scratch, it's not anymore a state of ayin. It's not nothingness. You've begun shaping something, but it's not. It's not. Chkik is when you really start engraving it. That's in Kalim. Then he says the same thing as in Eir. That this level, the Kshela Ayin Lo Mechai Vayesh, where he's talking about Chochmah. The Chochmah is Yesh Ma'ayin from Keser. So he says it's not a full Yesh. It's not complete Ayin, but it's not complete Yesh. Same thing. Then he says, L'fi zehu be'er ha-Chochmah shayich l'ishtalshlus. V'yesh lema gamkin de b'chinas ha-Chochmah she'en lo gavin klal b'chinas al-yena de Chochmah. So I think, reading that, it sounds to me, he's almost a tivuk between these two things. In other words, the higher level of Chochmah, he says al-yena, is completely the colorless. And maybe the lower level of Chochmah that's already connecting to Bina. Maybe. That may be the answer to the prism thing. So that way, you also have the second dimension. Because you see, there's an advantage in each. The advantage of having that Chochmah, that the colorless has colors, is that there's more connection to the structure of existence. But the disadvantage is that you don't have a pure Aveda, B'tarasa. You don't have the pure color. Because there's something is tainted. The interesting thing is, I go back to that because it's bothering me. Because before he said the white brings out the pure color of the color. And here he's saying white brings out, the pure Aveda brings out that the yesod of everything is the white, so to speak, the colorless. 1 second. So say the real... And I think it's a very darkest dikavod. It goes like this. If a Rebbe would have some even tint of agenda, Chas v'Shalom, so two things would happen. So even when he's impacting someone, it's not the real you that's emerging, it's tainted a little by that. 1 second. So the interesting thing is that the channel that's completely selfless, if it has no color at all, and is bringing out your color, it will bring you to the source of all colors. What he's really saying is that the real nature of the true color red is not just that it's red, that it's God made it to be red. Now, if blue would be bringing out the red, you'd be missing its connection straight to its source, because the blue is impacting. So, in other words, it's the word here is that yes, it's red because God wants it to be red, but not because it's red because it's red. But another color would never let you know that. In other words, when they say Eidei and Say and Shav, that we're unique individuals, it's not we're trying to destroy the uniqueness. We're trying to say is your uniqueness is not because you're colored. Uniqueness is because God wanted you to be unique. Remember we talked about Keach HaGvul, we talked about when we ultimately align creation with the source, you're saying that existence is exactly, a stone is meant to be a stone because that's what God wants it to be, not because it came for other reasons, for any ulterior motive. I'm not sure that's as deep as he wants to say it, but it definitely comes out that way. You understand my point here?
Yeah, no, now it's in a way an answer to what I was asking, I think.
The value of having a colorless, a completely uncolored state, like Ayin, the Chokhmah, is that we can introduce into the world of tzedakah and the world of mitzvahs, and as he said, tzedakah, sinas hara, we can introduce an element that is completely pure. That's correct. But you see, the interesting thing is, does that compromise the uniqueness of the color? And he says, no, on the contrary, that brings out its true nature. So in other words, it's fascinating because you think the opposite. You think the closer you get to what God wants, it doesn't matter whether you're red or blue. And here, no, the opposite is true. Your real red comes out because instead that's the point. Huh? That's made of the kavart.
The closer you get to the... So
right.
You should be losing your identity.
Right.
And it's bringing out your identity even more.
Exactly. Because the identity is created by God. If the identity was a klippah, it's one thing. But the identity is a true God. Because in other words, God, Allah b'machshavte, that you should be you.
I think that's what he's trying to say.
It definitely, no, I don't know if he's trying to say it, but definitely the conclusion is that. Because I keep saying to myself, in the mashal, the mashal is saying, you have a white backdrop, so it brings out the true red, white. Here, what is he saying? Because the yesod of Aveda is completely pure, it's bringing out the true color of what? Of tzedakah. He's trying to say is you should do tzedakah not because you're getting closer to God, but because it's white. Yeah. So what he means bringing out the true color of tzedakah, you understand? Right. That's why I'm saying you have to. It seems like you have to come to this conclusion.
I don't see how you come to that conclusion. Let's say with tzedakah, with learning, for example, when you're giving tzedakah, right away when you're giving tzedakah, if you're giving it because the Rebbe said to give tzedakah, right away when you start to engage in tzedakah, there's so many different things that come up. You're giving it because you feel good. If you don't give it because you feel good, then how much are you going to give? You make a decision, does he need it more, or you want to give it to this guy, to that guy? So automatically the colors hit. The minute you're going to do the thing, you're right away faced with all these colors. So my question is, and learning the same thing, and every minute.
All your questions, by the way, are very consistent. This is very similar to the question the other day. So let me ask you a question. Did you ever do something without personal gain?
Yeah.
So that's a good example of no color.
But it was something. One second, but
no, so then you did it for personal gain. I'm talking about.
No,
so until
I'm making a point here. I did it.
But I just okay, fine.
No, wait a minute, but it doesn't fall into the what we're talking about. I did it for that, but it didn't help the person. In other words, what I have to do, if I have a bigger scope, I wouldn't do it because I have to think about it. I did it because I have to do it. Let's say, for example.
Okay, so that's why the Rebbe Rashad, that's why you learn Chassidus, to grow from where you are to get to a better level.
So my question is, how do you do it? That's my question. For example, if you have I'll give you an example. I have $1 in my pocket, or $2 in my pocket, I want to buy a coffee. Someone comes along and says, give me something. Wait a minute.
One second, you're asking me a question. How do you become a Chassidus Yid?
No, that's not my question. Let me finish my question.
I'm saying, is that what you're asking?
No.
That's exactly what you're asking, in my mind.
Let me finish, you'll see.
I heard what you said.
No.
You said you're repeating yourself now.
How am I repeating?
We all heard what you said, and I answered you.
So my question is...
Did I answer his question?
Not yet.
He didn't
Not to
understand.
me. So one more minute, half a minute. My question is like this. Does it make sense to take $1,000 if I had someone came along and give him $1,000? $1 I'd give it because it fits in with the program. It just says, I have to give his doctor, he's there, I have $1, that's all I have, I'll give him. But now, the guy comes along and he wants $1,000, I give him $2. Why? Because I don't think he needs $1,000. I think $2 will do the job. Now the question is, does that bring in a color right away or not? And how do I connect it with the Chassidus Yid? Does it make sense?
That's why I asked you a question. Did you ever do something for no cheshbonus at all?
At what scope? Yeah, you have to think about it. Otherwise,
so I'm saying if you didn't, then find a Chassidus Yid that did and ask him how one does it. You're talking about how you have such bittul.
I don't think the answer, what you're saying now, coincides with what we talked about the last 9 minutes. I don't see how it connects.
I want to know how to put the cover of this in the judgment.
You have to
how what?
You have to have a
How
judge.
to put the cover of this in the judgment.
You can do stupid, just for the heck of doing it. For example, learning. You want to tell me that I just sit down with Ayin Beis.
Remember I spoke about having a personal mashpiyah. When a person has a question,
No, but that's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking is, am I doing it when I'm doing something because the Eibush said to do it? Right away comes in, you must think, I'll be learning Mishnah, I'll be learning Gemara, because I want to learn, I don't want to learn, I'm going to learn something I don't want to learn. I'm trying to say that right away you're dealing with colors.
That means we're not there yet. We're not there yet. If right away we're dealing with colors, that means we're not there yet.
I'm asking how could you deal without colors? It wouldn't make sense.
We're not
to
there
deal
yet.
without colors.
If you would be there, you would be dealing without colors.
Okay, I accept that, but I don't understand it. That's all I
well, that's why, look, take any Chassidish story where a Rebbe told a Chassid to become a Balagola, which was hepech everything he was. He was a Talmud Chacham, he could have been a Rosh Yeshiva. You have many stories. The Rebbe said, and the Chassid didn't even ask a question. He didn't say, explain to me. He heard the Rebbe said it, he went and just did it. Do you relate to such a story?
Yeah, you know why? You know why? Because the Rebbe said to him specifically.
Right.
No, the Rebbe said specifically.
But you have.
So what would you need better than that?
He didn't say for thy neshama nothing. He just told. Let's say the Rebbe didn't say for thy neshama is better. Let's say he didn't say.
So you still
You see, you can't relate.
Same thing could come from the Rebbe.
So what does that mean? That means that with alt cheshbenis, because you accept the authority. So God says that you should give tzedakah. Now, of course, someone say, well, how much tzedakah should I give? So that's why we go to a mashpia if a person has a suffer, because we all have a nefesh abamis. We all have tainted, because your cheshbenis could also be like he said. He also said another thing. Your cheshbenis can bring tatas. When you make a cheshbon, the parentheses, he said, levad zeh sheyuchlos b'zeh tatas chas v'sholem k'shehel ch'macharatam. So let's start with that, the basic thing. You can make a mistake on your own. Maybe your calculations are very nice for your convenience from the formula. So let's start with that. And when you go with Tom, you can make a mistake. Now, but maybe your Tom makes sense. You're asking a good question. So how do you know? So the famous story of Nachum Chernobler, the guy came to him, and first he was going to give the whole money to somebody, and then he said, well, I should give it to a lot of people. But bottom line, he wasn't giving to anybody. So until he came to realize who came first, as his thought was to give it away. Who's stopping that? The Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer is not going to tell him to keep the money, because he's not going to keep the money. He wouldn't do. So sometimes when we have a doubt, should we do this, should we do that, you go to an objective person who doesn't make a toss and can give you advice. That's number one. That's how you deal with colors. We all have colors, obviously. You're asking how we deal with colors? We all have colors. That's number two. Number two, when you learn Chassidus, you realize there's a place to reach that has no color. Now, I'm not saying all of us here can be in that place. I said also, Le'elim yasik odem b'teir mitzvah shalei l'shma. M'teich shalei l'shma ba l'shma. So you could ask, how does that stream with this chapter? He's talking here that Shalei L'Shma is a lot less than being connected, like he said in Tanya, Mavukish, that you should want to be close to God is a pretty good L'Shma. But it's still not pure. So the answer, as I alluded to yesterday, this Pedic is not telling us that everybody's on this level and everybody can be on this level. He's telling you the way the facts are. You want purity? That's Chochmah. Don't think yourself, your Shalei L'Shma is not Chachma. Your Shalei L'Shma is on your level of your Kalim and your colors. And the first step is, the Rambam says clearly.
Once you do the Shalei L'Shma.
Yeah. So the Rambam says, when you tell a child, here, listen, if you learn, we'll give you a prize, a reward. It's not because he's weak. That's the nature of a human being. So when you get older, it's covered. You get even older, maybe it's ruchnis. Ruchnis is also a reason. Or you say the Rebbe. You're giving Gishmak to the Rebbe. All these things are reasons. And you climb. What he's establishing here is, if you want to know what the ultimate level is no color at all. That's why I said, if you want to identify with, you have to find an example once in your lifetime. Was there anything you did absolutely no color? That's the question. And in a Chanami, it would probably be a situation where even Nachas to the Rebbe is not enough, because it's also color. So I don't know if you're going to find a lot of examples, but the bottom line is, he's stating here, for the record, what it is. So the purest level is one that's...
Such a key line, the last line on the page.
No.
It's in the last line on the page.
No, hold on, but it informs us that even when you're doing things Shalei L'Shma, you're doing things for colors, for colored reasons. Number one, you can make a mistake, like you said. Number two, you don't want to stay there. You want to grow toward and realize that a lot of things we do is for us. Fine, that's where you are. That's human beings. But you want to grow from that. And I think everybody grows in their level. I can't say everybody's going to jump the same approach. But let's put it this way. If a person, the ultimate kavanah is that a person should do it because that's what they were sent to do, and not because of self-interest. Because at the end of the day, let's go the other way around. What's the difference between a fruma id that's doing it for self-interest, or a guy is out in the street and is a grubba yum doing it for self-interest? Everybody has their self-interest. This one's doing grubba averis, this one's doing edela averis. Or not averis, he's doing edela self-interest thing. Ultimately, but they're both not God-centric. They're both not looking to God. They're looking at themselves. So this one, his life is kosher pizza, and this one's not kosher pizza. If you know what I'm trying to say. In other words, so this one has a kosher selfishness, and this is a non-kosher selfishness. The selfishness is very equal. I would say from God, they're probably pretty close. Distant, rather. So the answer is, that's why Chassidus comes, that we're not just selfish kosher people, selfish Torah people. We want to be godly people. And to be a godly person, you have to be less self. And this, saying it, that brings out the real you. As a matter of fact, I would say even deeper. If that chassid became a balagola because he gave nachas to the Rebbe, it would not have been the kavanah. If he became balagola despite everything he wanted, it was a chepech, then the true him would come out. Because that's why his neshama was created, to be a balagola, not because he's getting something from it. Now, we don't begin that way. That's why Leilim Yasgodim. That's the nature. We talk about existence. We talk about the tzimtzum. God created us in a self-interest way. You wake up in the morning, you feel your hunger, not someone else's hunger. There's nothing wrong with that, per se. I mean, not wrong. Even al pi halacha, chayecha kaidmin. There is your life you have to take care of. But then begins a growth where you move from selfish to selfless. How far are you going to go? Everyone is different. I know some people who have no idea, and they cannot. They tell me every time, there's no way that someone does something not for some selfish reason. So I always say to myself, I don't say it to them because I don't want to insult them, because they kol ha-pesel b'mum ha-pesel. You can't conceive of something you're not capable of. They don't think they're capable, so they think that no one else is capable. So that's what I always say. I said, you know what, you're that way. But maybe there are other people wired differently. Maybe there are people that have that capacity. But it's hard for someone to say, Rabbi would always tell the story about the behemoth. The behemoth would always get, the water. They gave a behemoth water every morning and to eat, to drink. But the behemoth was happiest, the cow, was happiest Sunday morning. Because Sunday morning, the pots that they would clean out were from the chont and all the greasy oil, so the water was reicher, was richer. So the behemoth really had a great... The Sunday morning was a yontif. Eating all the chont, leftovers and everything. One Motzei Shabbos, the maid forgot to do that, so she washed out the kelim. So when the morning came, they were clean and they weren't having any grease in them. So the behemoth stopped giving milk. They asked the behemoth why. He said, because she can't verginnen that I have this delicious water, and she drank it up herself. Because the behemoth can't understand that maybe you just have to clean the pots. The behemoth said, there's no question that, because a behemoth thinks like a behemoth thinks. The behemoth thinks that water is so good, someone else must have drink it up. I'm just trying to say is we all chachamahu emer. We project what we are. Now, that's why I think a lot of people have a problem with real bittul. When you tell them what a Rebbe is, they have no clue. They can't understand that. Like, there's a famous story where the guy said to go to the Rebbe, I don't know if it's a true story, a Papa Meiser, to go to the Rebbe for a bracha. The Rebbe wouldn't give a bracha, so his Rebbe tells him, give him some more money. So he offered the Rebbe money. He says, give him more. He says, how do you know he's going to? He says, it's not a Rebbe, I know. Enough money, you're going to get it. We judge by what we are, and that's how it is. It's very hard to imagine a purity in this world. So, I understand your question. Your question is what everyone asks. How could you do something for color? Now, the truth is, it's hard. It's not easy. It's process.
So key. The last line is amazing. It's
But on the other hand, you answered it yourself. You said it's almost impossible to give an example in reality because it's just levels of purity. But
because if you do everything
totally
pure.
What are you referring to?
Last line. Because if you do mitzad kudus iskashas Hashem levadei, azay nasim kol advan ma'amitasam k'mei she'emetzah. This is such a key line.
Yeah, that's right. I said it yesterday, but it's a very powerful line. Because it's the real mitzias of existence.
It holds the key to the whole chapter, basically. That if you do mitzad iskashas Hashem, so then it's ma'amitasam k'mei she'emetzah.
But you don't mean it's kasus to be connected. It's kasus meaning because of that's.
In other words, what's going on here is that the white color, the colorless color, white, is so selfless, so no color, that it helps you be the real you, and the real you is to be also colorless in your color,
You
so
don't
to
look at
speak.
things in the colored way.
Wow.
Can I just say one thing?
So in other words, so red, the shlichus of red is to be red, not to be blue, but not because it likes to be red.
Shouldn't try to.
Right, not because it likes to be red, because that's what God wants, and who brings that out is Chochmah that brings that out. In other words, for example, I'll give you an example. I remember the Rebbe once asked a question: when you learn Torah with Kabbalah Seil, or you learn without Kabbalah Seil, because you Geschmack, who's going to learn with more iyun? So l'chayr you'd say the one who learns with Geschmack, because Kabbalah Seil you're doing it, so you're doing it to be Yetz Zayin for God. So you don't have to hutter this so much. Whereas the person who's doing it with Seichel will verstehen, so he's going to hutter. And the Rebbe said, no. The Chatchil is like that. The Seichel will verstehen, but the Seichel is going to stop once it understands, and Kabbalah Seil will never stop. In other words, if you have real Kabbalah Seil, the Eibishter sagt, ich will das verstehen, not just do it. Ich will das verstehen, the learner, not just do it. Sit with a Gemara. Then you go all the way. Even if your Seichel is not Mechayev further, you're going to go dig deeper. So which is deeper Seichel? I always thought of this because I always say to myself, if we can find that an ethical scientist, a Kabbalah Seil scientist, will be a better scientist, not just a better Jew or a better ethical person. He's a better scientist because he knows he was blessed with that wisdom because God blessed him. That would be a big achievement. Because they'll say like this, you know what? He may be a better person, but he's not a better scientist, you know. Instead the word is, so it's a meredik word. Yeah. I think this is ultimately, when you're thinking about it, this is really how the Keach HaGvul, if you can align the Sfiris. See, the Sfiris like Shammai and Hillel, Chesed and Gvura, or Gvura and Chesed, Hillel and Shammai. So you could say, the reason I lean toward Chesed, because my personality is a Chesedika one. Or you could say, no, God created me with a Chesedika personality, and I have to therefore do it because that's what I was created to do. See, many people say, no, you have to put yourself aside and do it because God wants. Here comes the combination. It's because God wants, but He wants you to be you and not me. It infuses the diversity with a divine absoluteness. That's what it does.
Well, we see.
It infuses relativity with absoluteness. Oh, okay.
The story with the pitum, with the person who saved for that street that she bit off the pitum, and the Rebbe said it. So I know it's a true story because the Rebbe brought it. The Rebbe said that it's in the anything that was done in such a capacity, the tailor who gave away all his earnings for 3 years just to save the people from which we heard.
So what's your point? That everything has a color?
No, that wasn't no color. That was selfless.
So what's your point?
My point is when they do manage to do something with Alemis, it hits it hits the spot properly.
100%, for sure.
It doesn't go. All these small little colors fall away. You should have. You could have. The bottom line is what you did, and if you do that, that's right away you get the on the spot.
So the Eibishter wants these colors. That's in the Kudah.
That's
colors.
That's also the color, yeah. Let's say, otherwise it wouldn't be here.
No, it's not that he wants his colors.
Your
color comes out
because
when you do the bad colors, your color comes up.
Yeah,
Just your
color
selfless.
comes up. Yeah.
This is the real color. The real color comes out.
Your real color.
Okay. Next chapter. It's very seizik to the whole picture. Kesher Aveda is more like Mesiras Nefesh and Amunah. Here is more like in Seichel, in the world of Seichel, the colorless side of it, uncolored. I just want to say one thing that may be helpful to your question in general. Look, Chassidus comes to retrain how we think, bottom line. Because as long as we think like material human beings, Es kann sich nicht legen in Ayin von Elikus. That's the bottom line. Because material human beings think in a very particular way. So a lot of this stuff is really mind-bending, really. It's meant to bend your mind. And if you get it, it's usually not a good sign. If you get it initially. It takes challenge because you really have to rethink things. Like even this, we just talked about colors. We think about colors, everything's colored. There's things that are uncolored. Same thing, we cannot relate to, for example, to say, as you put the question, is God in this room right now here? Or is this table and this chair in this room here? So the so-called initial, I would even say, I'd say childish, but the initial simple answer is that no, we don't see God. But God is here, and it's our problem. But that's not correct. The same God that you say, hey, see, we have a problem because you can't see how two things could be in one room together. So you have to say, we're blinded. But what happens if God, the same God that is here, also says, I want to conceal myself? So which is more powerful, God's power to conceal or God's power to be revealed? Who says God has to be revealed? We think in terms of reveal. So if we don't see Him, it means He must be hiding. But maybe His presence is not one defined by reveal and hidden. That's what you have to think about. Because you're thinking about God as if you think about like someone, if I don't see a person that I know in the room, that means He must be out of the room, or He's hiding somewhere. We don't understand how something can be there in a different way. That's not concerned either revealed or hidden. But maybe there's a state of being that's not revealed and not hidden. There are subatomic particles in this room, and they're not hidden. They're just not, you can't see them. They're not hiding. They didn't conceal themselves. They're just on a level that you don't relate to. So I'm trying to say is that, you see, the key here is not to just, we think in terms of physical space. Two people can't sit in the same chair. But two people can love each other, even though they're in different chairs. So they're like one. I'm just giving examples. You have to think outside of the regular tools that we use in Hasaga. Anyway.
What's Yichudei law?
Yichudei law is a step lower than God. Did you know that? There's Atzmus, there's Yichudei law, Yichudei Tata, and Atzmus unites Yichudei law, Yichudei Tata. You ever hear that expression? Atzmus connects Das Aliyah and Das Tachton. Yichudei law is one perspective. It's not the only perspective. It's not only two perspectives, God's and ours. There's God's, there's the higher perspective, and there's the lower perspective. That's how you have to think. There's Mamala, Seviv, and Atzmus. And Atzmus is not closer to Yichudei law than he is to Yichudei Tata. Because Atzmus is not bound by these rules. See, for you, Ruchnius is superior to Gashmis, right? But for God, who says Ruchnius is superior to Gashmis? Who made that rule? Who says Bli Gvul is superior to Gvul? We think that way, because we think finite, infinite, is much greater. But who said that? Who said greater is greater? Who decided that? Who made that rule? These are rules already in an existence. Gvul respects Bli Gvul. But Atzmus respects Gvul and Bli Gvul equally, or disrespects them equally. If you wish. I mean, it's a longer discussion, but I'm just trying to say is you have to challenge your premises. The bottom line, God is not on our terms. In our terms, yes, God will be Bli Gvul, because I'm Gvul, so God must be Bli Gvul. What does Bli Gvul mean? Bli Gvul means not the Gvul that I am. That's what you're really saying. So it's also a God on your terms. It's just a God beyond your terms, also on your terms. You're thinking the greatest a person could be, the greatest principle. If my father is strong, God must be infinitely stronger than him. That's our point of reference. And there's nothing wrong with starting like that. But don't think that's not the big picture. That's, going very slowly up. Then you come to realize, you know what? A minute here. Maybe I don't get it. Maybe God's greatness is not defined by our greatness. When you look at this, you start beginning to comprehend that type of other reality. It doesn't come quickly. You have to first figure out that it's not that we don't have it all figured out. But then God put this existence into place as well.
But you said that this table is a table and not God.
I didn't say not God, by the way. I said Hu mekayme shel ve'en elam mekayme. That's use Chazal. God is the table is not God, correct. Godliness is in the table, we would say. Anyway, bottom line is there's three perspectives. That's really what it comes down to. There's our perspective, there's a perspective from above, and there's the divine perspective, the Atmos, that's beyond both. And He wants us to join the two, and then we connect to the third. How's that? That's what we do. When you do a mitzvah, you're taking gvul, you're connecting it to bli gvul, ultimately, and together they join and they connect to God that's beyond both. And you can't get to the third without that, those two, generally speaking.
Malachim are closer to God than Hashem's Gvul.
Well, it depends what you mean. The word closer is a very important question. Like, for example, yes, a Kohen Gadol, for example, Moshe Rabbeinu, closer to God. Depends what you mean by closer. In Giluyim, yeah, and Etzem not.
Means closer.
Yeah, if you mean that way, yeah, so it depends what you mean. But I know what you mean. If in Kavonis Atzmus, then there's nothing like Tachtenim. Nothing is closer. Seif Ma'aseh Machshav Tchila. If you're talking in Revelation, it all depends on what you have to define the word closer. The Rebbe would say was weiter, wasn't enter in Shlichus. So
Because that's what the Kavanah,
but you're not talking about physical space. Let's go to the next.
Moshe Rabbeinu in Etzem Nat. That was a Plitas Apeh or?
No, it wasn't a Plitas Apeh. If you're talking Giluyim, Moshe is for sure higher. You're talking about Giluyim? There's a certain element where Moshe is equal to everybody, yeah. In Etzem Mamash, yeah. Because that's about a Rebbe as well. I mean, it depends how you're talking. You're talking here, it depends on the Neshama Klolis. There's... Friedrich Rebbe was asked once, what's it Matan Teira Uvgitan and Moshe Rabbeinu? We know what it did accomplished in everybody else, because it left it up. But what's the Moshe Rabbeinu? So he says, as Omar Gezayn the Mile for Ish Pashat. That's what Friedrich Rebbe said. Yeah. It's interesting, yeah? Yeah. Okay, Kuf Yud Ches. According to the above, we can say that Masim, it's fitting. Masim, it can be reconciled. Masim is consistent with what it says in Bechai, Seif Parsha Mishpatim. It's Evan Sapir. Remember, where does it say Sapir in the Torah? It's the end of Mishpatim there. It says Evan, what's the Lashon there? Yeah, he was part of this. He has all Pshat Lemers Drusot. So what is the end of Parsha Mishpatim there? It says Kelivnas HaSapir. The image they saw, the Markova, Kelivnas HaSapir. So what does the Bechai say? B'Shem Harasag, Rab Sadi Gon. The Sapir Evan Yekara Levena. The Sapir is a precious white stone. V'kach Kosav Haradak, B'Shem Gon, Shehu Kristal. Same thing the Radak writes, the Shem Gon, B'Shem Gon, usually is Rab Sadi Gon. Crystal. So I see there's a star. Let's see what he says at the end of the Sefer here. What page is this? The Sham Bepad is Perik Beis Be'in Halev in the Kesser Kosav Gamkin Shazam Etzad B'Chinosei El Asvirus. These are pieces that Rebbe Rashab wrote Ein Tzarech Lahaitik, which means when they actually went to Maitik, they didn't. He wrote it, but it said not to be Maitik. The Rebbe said in the Sikha that we should print also the Ein Tzarech Lahaitik in the Hisofis. Because they're not Ein Tzarech Lahaitik, it's not a Pshashar for Vort, it's just why he would not be Maitik, I'm not really sure. Anyway, it says the Sham Bepard is Perik Beis, being Halev in the Kesser Kosav, by the whiteness of Kesser, Shazom Tzad B'Chinosei El Asvirus. It means, B'Chinosei, by the way, is like the word not B'China as a level, but when you say B'China, like B'Chinosei as in being measured, like a test. B'China also means to be Boichin. Right, so the B'Chinosei El Asvirus means as Kesser relates to the Svirus. I guess he's adding now. I guess why the reason he probably didn't maitik it because it confuses matters. We're not talking about Kesser. We're talking about Chochmah. But Kesser also has a color. Love him. So 1 second. So what is he saying here? B'Shem Kristal. So he says Perik Beis. It's how Kesser relates to the Sfiras. Remember, we're talking here the lower level of Chochmah. There's the higher level of Chochmah that relates to Kesser, and there's Kesser relates to the Sfiras. That's okay.
He doesn't say Kesser.
I just told you what the.
Yeah, but okay, without it, let's.
No. I'm still dwelling on what he's adding here. That's all. I'm just speaking out loud. I live in the Kesser Zagam Tzavchus Al Sfiras. The Inyan what's the Inyan in this? The Yadua, the Gavin Lavan, who Gavin Atzmi. The color white is a core color. The bezech cholor govern love and mishari hagvanim. With this is distinguished the color white from other colors. She'ena davar nesav al atzmus hadavar klal. It's not an additional element on the core thing itself.
He doesn't mean love, he means crystal, clarity, clear.
Not love as we're talking about natural white. The clear white, that sense, yeah. Yeah. The eina k'may shar hagvanim the tzeva adaim v'yarik. Not like the other colors, like the color of red. Yarik we said was yellowish, greenish. U'kai gavnes shekulam hem nesofim alatz musam. Alatz miyusam. All of them are additions on the core object that has that color.
What's like that miyusam is what? Is it clear?
We're middle of reading. Let's see. Mashenkin gavan lavan in a davar nesav al etzem adavar kim hu etzem. Whereas this clear color or white color is not something additional on the core thing, but it is the etzem. He's not spelling it out yet. Like all things that are, let's say, the color of red or yellow, ein zesha etzem ukach. We said green. He says it may be yellowish. I think yorik is green or maybe yellow. I don't know. How are we going to determine this?
Hebrew, modern Hebrew means green.
Modern Hebrew is green,
means green, but a lot of places
it's yellow.
Yeah.
I would say either one. It's really.
Doesn't matter.
I would say green. It's not, to me, yellow is the Hebrew for yellow is also tzohov.
Tzohov. Nee, geht von Yiddish, das steht theoretisch.
Ich weiß, aber da nicht. Efshe te sagen. Ein zeh sha etzem ukach. When something is a color red or green or yellow, it's not that the etzem thing is that color. Ki'im hu me'ezeh sibbe hainu me'ezeh harkovet mishum zeh nasa b'marazeh. The reason is this color is for some reason, which means ezeh harkovet, some type of hybrid, some type of mixture that's being mixed into the picture. The mishum zeh, because of that, that's why it becomes this color.
Like yellow is green and blue together. Like
a yellow or green glass, or yaduma or red. It's not that the glass is as this color. That's its tint. It's basically like being painted. I understand we could ask the question: what about things that are naturally red? Let's say red apple. No, right now it appears that he's saying that every color is a paint, is basically a tint, but it's not the etzem of a thing. But we do see, for example, some things. Grass is green. No one painted it. It's created green. We'll get to that. Let's first see what he's going to say, and then we'll address that. In physics, by the way, this is completely correct. White is the natural color, and every color we see, like green and blue, is because light is being bent. That's why we see a different color. So everything is truly white light. They call it white light. But it's bent.
Even the blade of grass?
No, it's not an illusion. It's that white light bounces off things, so it sends off different shapes. It's like a different... so there's something in the grass that's causing it to bend that way. That's correct. It's not complete. It's not painted. But it's still the real nature of light, of images is white. That's the point. In other words, there's three levels. Painting is for sure. If you take a white rock and you paint it red, it's not the etzem of it. But the question is, what about natural colors? Okay, let's see where he's going to go. We'll see how much we have to define this.
Coke that is clear.
Coke?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola as a drink?
Coca-Cola.
But that's falsche Sache.
Yeah,
we might as well talk about something natural.
No, my point is.
Like some people think, like someone says to me, Diet Coke. I don't drink Diet Coke. I only drink the real thing. So I said, you mean you drink the real sheker? So this is the sheker of the sheker. The Coke is echa. Drink the real thing. It's like he said. What was the one he said? He says, I want to show you my couch. He says, what's so special about your couch? He says, it's authentic imitation leather. It's an authentic imitation. They asked Shlomo Karbach once, are you for real or you're a fake? He says, I'm a real fake. That's what he said. The same thing, a stone. That's a glass. Same thing, a green or yellow stone, a red. Einish be'etzem hukein. It's not that the stone is fundamentally core at the core level. This color. Shari anurein eisi b'mara acheres. Because we can see a stone a different color. Ragzeu shamara boy barkova. That means that the color comes in barkova. Again, arkova is like hybrid mix. It's a mixture. When you say arkova, it's like there's a pure element, and then when you mix, let's say you take water. It's interesting. All these he's saying is except water. He's taken all kinds of things that have other colors. Water is a perfect example, because water is naturally clear, and you mix in, let's say, a tint, so it gets bluish. So if you see bluish water, you know something mixed into it. It doesn't have it on its own. Okay. The truth is, the Chassidus does bring water as the example of a Gever Natzmi. Okay, let's see where he's going with this. I don't want to conclude.
Where do we see this? The stone is red.
And they're trying to say is that stone be'etzem doesn't have colors. That's, I think, what he's saying.
Red, then it's obviously that it's
That's yeah. Look, I want to read it first because I don't want to come to conclusions because he's clearly being very precise. And midaf verstehen, good. So the color came in, was mixed in to shape it, to color it this way. So now he said objects. Till now he's talking about objects that have a color. Now he's saying the color itself of red or green, gamkein eina atzmi, is also not core. The color itself is murkav. The color itself is a hybrid, is a mixture. For some reason, because of some reason, it became this color and this look. Seva is more color, Mara is more look. Mashenkin dover halavan hu atzmi. Mashenkin, a white thing, is a core thing. She'ena murkav b'shum dover. It's not mixed or hybrid with anything. U'kumesh be'emes ena motze klal mitziyas gevin she'yetziv lavan mamish. Like we see be'emes, doesn't exist. In Metzias doesn't exist a color that is truly pure white. Kamei halavan be'etzem. Like a love in the way it is fundamentally. Gvanim halavenu shin mitzayim, and the color white that do exist, v'hainu tzeva halavan, meaning the color white, not lavan be'etzem. Meaning white as it is a color, not as it is in its pure, clear state. Einam shavim klal le'etzem levnunius kamei shu be'etzem. Are not at all comparable to the pure whiteness, the way it is in its core level. Shari onureim pishton halavan ein dugmosi b'tzeva klal. Like we see, pishton halavan, white flax. Ein dugmosi b'tzeva klal. You don't find an example of such whiteness that there should be a color that's white like that.
So he is talking about.
So pishton is pure.
Pishton is not pure.
So one second, nobody's saying that pishton is also unique.
It's not possible yet.
Now, is pishton he's saying is a mile here or is it sudden?
That's a mile.
I think it's a mile also. One second, that's is pishton levnoni's commercial betzim?
No,
I'm asking.
He's saying that it's lavan, but you won't be able to take anything else and compare it to this lavan.
So is it like lavan atzmi?
No.
Oh, I think so.
So why is he bringing it?
He brings
Because
a mile.
He said lavan atzmi. There's nothing in existence that is really pure clear. Everything has some type of. So he says. So how's pishton bring that out? I'm just asking. Because it's pure that is what? Nothing can compare to it. So Bekolske in the pure lavan.
No, even that is not mamash.
He doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. It says ein dugmose b'tzeva klal she'yitziv gamken lavan kamehu. He's saying nothing is like pishton. Not that pishton is not like pure.
It's not clear. It's white.
It's not as white. I do know white, but
Silk is clear. Silk is not white. Snow is white.
Snow is white.
Wool is white. Flax is clear. Flax is like silk. I think, right? What is flax?
It's not like this color. It's
like silkish.
Plastic.
Flax looks like silk. Am I correct? Real pure flax. Flax comes from a plant. Am I right?
Yeah.
But it looks like silk. It's silkish. If I'm almost sure.
Silk is colorless.
It's clear. It's like huh? No. Pishton?
Linen.
Linen is what?
So if you buy
Peshton, tzemer or pishton?
yeah.
Some pishtin.
It's linen. But if you buy linen, not
That's
dyed
linen, but
not dyed linen.
I know what you mean. But linen is
It's not a white. It's not a white like a color page.
from
Color white.
Hold on. What? Why? Let's go back. Why is he bringing? One second.
Because that's a natural white.
But he's not saying. It's not. Look. He started by saying like this.
I know what you're saying, but
That white, clear white, doesn't exist. Everything that exists is already. What do you say? Everything exists. Right, that's a
natural white. It's not.
So how does that prove what he just said?
Yeah, but we're not talking about the clear like water.
Why is he bringing pishtin? Can you give me an reason?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's not something that was painted on or added to anything.
And therefore, how does that? He just said. So how does that explain what he just said?
It's considered to be white.
Right, and that's
We don't
know how pishtan looks.
On the bottom.
Found out, that's a problem.
No, you're saying that they can
Look at the whole Agvanim is from Nitila even flax.
Is what? Go finish the sentence. He doesn't say that. No. He does not say that. He doesn't say what you said. He says there's no example to this color anywhere. He's not saying what you're saying. Read the line. Forget about it. I read after the parentheses. It's not negated to this.
It's a proof.
I'm not sure.
He's saying clearly that Seva Aloshon Alobon Einam Shavim Klal Le'etzem Lavnunis Kemo Shuhu Be'etzem.
And what's it? Read. Tell me what these words mean. Ein dugmase b'tzeva klal sheyitzeva gamkin lovin kamehu. What does that mean?
It means it's clear.
Read the words and tell me translate them in simple English.
You don't have any other white
that is
like this.
Like pishtan.
Yes.
So what are you saying with that?
That means that pishtan is the real one. That's why he brings it.
So there is an existence one. Huh?
It's not white.
It doesn't say.
He's trying to say that white is different.
He's saying
that the color. Yes, he's saying the color white is just like any other color, because we see that in a natural state of white is different than the regular color white, and you cannot compare anything to it. That's what he's saying.
He's talking about
what?
In other words, we have a scenario where you can say we have the natural white, that there's no comparable color that's made.
He said that the emes in existence does not. Can't find pure clear white. Hold on. He started like this. Is that a fact? Is pishtan different?
That's what it seems.
Yes or no?
Yes.
He said. That's my question. He says they won't find in existence anything that is truly white, clear white.
The white one is saying.
What's that? You're contradicting yourself. You just said to me, pishtan is the pure or not pure?
Pishtan is the pure.
But he just said we don't find in existence anything like that.
It's an example. That's all. It's an example.
And the gvanim alaveinish in Mitzrayim, they're not at all comparable to the core. So now, how is pishtan proof for that?
You can't make the whites comparable.
I understand.
You can't make a white that's comparable to pishtan. That's what he's saying.
But then, therefore, what do we know from that?
All we just have.
All we know that the white that we have is like a regular color, like a blue, like a red, like another color, the regular white. That's
and what is pishtan?
And pishtan is what?
Pishtan is not a regular white like a color, but it's a natural.
Clear.
It's not clear. It's natural. If he wants to bring a right for clear, he brings a right from water. He'll bring a right from crystal. He wants to show you that even white itself is a regular color, like another color. That the color white is a regular color like another color.
How is pishtan different?
No. I don't think so.
How is pishtan different?
Like when you draw a painting and you use the word color white, it's also a color. It's not.
I don't know what you're reading. No, I don't think that's what he's saying.
How is pishtan different from a regular white?
It's not. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't look
he's
like
saying clearly.
It doesn't look like wool. It doesn't look like a white shirt. It doesn't look like a white.
How does it look? Clear.
It's a natural state of white. You can see it. You go to any store. They sell linen pants. And it's not white. It's white, but it's not white as a color.
It's like a plastic here, sometimes a plastic.
Let's continue. What time is it?
22.
The only thing you could say is maybe saying it like a kal v'chemer. That since there's that even pishtan, you don't find any whiteness that comes to it. So for sure, the pure core white, there's nothing that really we can find in this world. So even Pishton, which is already as pure as it gets, nothing compares, and maybe that's what he's saying. That's the Kal V'Chemer.
And snow is not as pure as it gets?
That's not the question, why snow. The question is, why is he, what is he trying to say? That's not the question we're asking. We're asking, why is he bringing Pishton here? You didn't have an answer to that.
Yeah, I did, because that's exactly why he's bringing Pishton. If he wants to bring
why? Tell me why.
He would bring the 4 whites.
Why is he bringing Pishton as an example? To explain what? Can you just tell me a logical answer for that? What is Pishton coming to explain?
It's coming to explain that the white that he uses in colors, like when he has...
But he never said that white used in colors. He said that the pure existence of real clear white doesn't exist. So why is he bringing
clear white
Pishton?
Doesn't exist, right.
So why is he bringing Pishton as an example?
I don't think he's bringing it as clear white, because there would be water.
So what does he bring? Why is he bringing Pishton altogether? What would be missing?
Pishton to show that in the white, the white we see is a color. It's a color. Like black, like red, like...
No, but that's not what he says. He says, and there's nothing compares to Pishton. Nothing compares to...
natural state, there's nothing can compare to it.
Nothing can compare to the color white of Pishton. Are you saying that?
Yeah.
What does that prove us? Prove to us?
That Pishton is not colored white, because if it would be colored white, you could.
That's not what he. But the line doesn't belong here. The line doesn't belong here. Then the line. Look at the context. He's saying that the emes there doesn't exist at all. The concept of clear. What you're saying, you should have said a few lines earlier. And he's saying there's nothing that compares to the color of Pishton.
Talking about before about Arkava between Adaim and Yarek and
Pishton has Arkava?
No.
Pishton doesn't have Arkava, so why is this relevant here?
That's why he's bringing that. Regular white has Arkava, but Pishton doesn't. And that's why you can't compare anything to it.
Well, hold on. But he said now. One second. So Pishton is like Levnuna Atzmis. Is that what you're saying?
Not in the sense of like water. Not in the sense of like water or clear.
Well, he didn't bring water, so I don't know why you're saying that. He said it doesn't exist. Not water, not crystal. He says in existence you cannot find. So I think he's saying that even Pishton, which is as pure as it gets, nothing can compare. That's what I think he's saying. So definitely
more pure than snow or than white.
That's what it looks like here. That's what it looks like.
The Torah wants to show white. It doesn't bring Pishton as an example.
That's your question. You have a question, but
it's not as white as it gets. It's as natural as it gets, not as white as it gets.
Who's talking about white now? We're talking about natural. We're talking about clear. Not talking about white. We're talking about clear. So the question is why he's bringing it. I think that's what he's saying.
If we get Pishton, is that material that's see-through? That was the thing so special about Mitzrayim. Their behavior, they were Pishton clothing, which you can see through.
Let's see the parentheses. Maybe it'll get clear. And by the way, he's not trying to say that white is like green and red. He's not saying that at all here. No, he didn't say such a thing. He says, Dovra lovenu atzmi she'ena murkav. He's saying white. He's not saying that at all. He's saying white is not murkav. Then he goes deeper. The real white, the real clear. I don't know. By me, white and clear is the same thing. I don't know. You keep going back there. White means clear here. What do you mean by white? We're not talking about the paint. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the white he's talking about here. White, loven in Hebrew means white. He means clear white. That's what he means white. It means clear. So let's get that clear. Okay? We're talking about clear here. Okay? Transparent.
You can see through, basically.
So he's saying like this. It's not murkav mishum davar. Then he says, you don't find in existence really something so clear. Now he says, and the color, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
And the things that are naturally colored white, I'm not talking about paint now, cannot compare them to the way they are in their core, real clarity. Right? Shari oniroim, that's a shahade is a proof. Shahade, like we see. Pishton halavan. Pishton. Halavan ein dugmasi b'tzeva klal sheyitziva gamkin lavan kamehu. So my understanding is that koshken v'kal v'chemer. We see Pishton, that is lavan. Nothing can compare to that type of clarity or whiteness. So b'melech koshken v'kal v'chemer, that you can't compare to the etzem levnunis k'meshu b'etzem. That's how I would read it, probably. How would you read it differently?
No, I would read it the same way.
Okay, fine.
But
So bottom line is Pishtin is not really the Etzem Levaneis, but Pishtin, compared to everything else, is also unique.
more in a natural state.
Yeah, they don't bring fish in the goyim. It's not really white color.
Right.
What?
They don't bring fish in the goyim. It's not really a white color.
What are you saying? Not true.
In the goyim.
What? In the what?
Goyim.
In the Goyim. Oh, so okay.
They don't bring fish. It's not really white color.
I don't know if he's going white now or not. He's talking about being whether it's unique or not. Is there expression somewhere Pishtin Halavan? Is that a pasuk? Shir Hashirim or something? I'm wondering. The Efsher the B'Tzeva Lovan in parentheses. The Efsher maybe the B'Tzeva Lovan Gamkein Halavnunis Hu Atzmi. We could say maybe that in the color white, the whiteness is core. But Tairuvis min Geven Acher Shaba Boy Ayedeh Atzmicha Ayedeh Ha'adoma. So in other words, the whiteness is natural, core to it, it's natural to it. It's not, but it also has in it a mixture of another color that comes through planting it or through the earth. Like a loven that's like reddish white. That mixes in it a little red into the white. In other words, what he's saying is that it could very well be, he's going in this parentheses and adding, that lovan, something is naturally white or naturally clear, that's natural. The fact, however, is we don't have anything that's just pure white. It always has a mixture of something else. In other words, it's not pshat that there's no such thing as pure white. That the lovan is not an additional color. In other words, when you see something, there's a part of it there's a natural color is white, and anything else is coming from somewhere else. That's already murkav, which is a little different. No, is it different? Not necessarily. No, he's explaining the whole idea. Because he is saying, see, the thing what's bothering me is what he's speaking, that there doesn't exist something that's completely mamish clear. He's not saying with that things that we see are white are just like red. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying that white is the natural color of existence. And in truth, real white doesn't even exist, mamish. Everything has some mix. But white, bottom line is white is a natural. In the parentheses he's now adding. So the natural color of things is white. However, things get mixed into it.
Yeah. No, well, white as a color, as the color white in the paint of white.
But he's not talking about that. That's not even a havamin. We're not talking about paint.
That's a havamin that it's like red and blue and like other colors, right?
Not even that, because even red and blue, he's talking natural red and blue. He's not talking about colored red. He's not talking about painting something red.
So it actually needs volkach.
He's talking about stones that are red. No, but he's speaking about, he said, like, for example, Evan HaYoruk. Schuchis Shireka. It seems to me he's not talking about paint. Because if he's talking about paint, what's the chiddush? Of course paint is murkav. You take something that is blue and paint it red. Obviously it's not, it's completely dover nesif. He must be talking about things that have some color, but the real color of everything is really white. I think it's like the prism idea. And the things, I can't say positive.
It doesn't mention things that like would be obvious. It doesn't mention things.
But if he's talking pure, then they have a question. Just like you can paint blue the wall, you can paint it white. So how does that help? Clearly he's talking about something more on a core level.
Because there also would be bringing eyes from other things.
Okay, let's continue here. Let's see where he's going with this. Because the example for color white above is chesed. That's a branch of chachma. His damus le'erein so baruch hu b'mashu b'chinas agili v'agili b'chinas bligvul. That has within it. You see, this is what I was saying. The lack of color is the gili of ein bligvul. So and this chachma has in it a similarity to the infinite divine light. B'mashu being that it's a level of gili, and the revelation is in the form of bligvul, meaning without color. The midas hagvura hi machlekes. The midas of gvura is different. B'mashi b'chinas heder agili b'chinas hagbola. Compared to ches, midas of gvura is machlekes. Is different, is unique, is distinct from chesed in the case that it's a lack of gili and lack of revelation and in a state of definition. Okay, now we're talking. That's what I was waiting for. I was looking for some type of chassidus here, so you can ground it. This is all, this is like technical.
That's how he proves that the Lovan is a
color atzmi. So b'meila, no, it's a very interesting word,
He's taking it in my
That's right. He's bringing proof that it's atzmi because it's bli gvul. Mashenkin gvura. So that, now this is a very, you say this is the parenthesis. In other words, this is the point we made earlier. Even though I said earlier that God is distant from bli gvul and gvul equally, which he is, atzmus, but nevertheless, once they begin to manifest, that's why we have this problem. If someone were to ask someone, if God naturally expresses himself, will he express himself as bli gvul or gvul? So you'd say for sure bli gvul. We are gvul. That doesn't mean that God is bli gvul. It just means that in the structure of existence, bli gvul is more reflective of something powerful than gvul is.
Yeah.
Then we have to learn that the truth is that gvul comes from the same atzmus that bli gvul does. But there's no question in the world of Giluyim, bli gvul is definitely higher. And it should be that way. That's why we have madregas. That's why Kedesh Kedoshim, you don't say is like Chayil. Because there is a key distinction. So when we say, I talked about this, remember we spoke about Kedusha, I said, what's Kedusha? If everything is godliness, Kedusha is reflected godliness. It's yelling and screaming to you that I'm godliness. Chayil or Klippa says, I'm me, I'm a yesh. That God created me, fine. But I don't yell God. Kedusha is Begili saying, I am I'm an expression of godliness. That's what real Kedusha is. That's his bit, like he says in Tanya. It's bottle, that's why it has Kedusha. A yesh is not bottle, so it doesn't have Kedusha in it. So basically what he's saying here is that Chesed, because it's reflective, Chochmah comes from Chochmah, it's reflective of the vine, and the vine naturally is colorless. Gvura, by definition, is limit. It's the breaks. It's Gvura. Like he says, it's, what does he say? Mecholekes, B'chins Hedra Gili. Hazeh Kamei Dover Nesef ala Etzem. Kamei Dover Nesef, not Dover Nesef. But it appears to us, because, let's put it this way, for godliness to extend itself bli gvul, to stop himself, seems to be unnatural. What the natural flow of God would be, umidum, eined mulvadi, everywhere you see it. It requires a particular effort, so to speak, to stop the flow. But chesed, being that it's only that it's a midah levad, it's like the core, the essence, which is a state of gili. And the gili, and the revelation is the way it is, the natural way it is. I like this. Is very interesting. He's Kameishahu, that's Atzmi, and when he's not Kameishahu, that's Dover Nesef. That's why in the color white, even in the world of color, in Midah, it's a Midah. Chesed is not Chesed. We're not talking about beyond existence, bli gvul. In the world of gvul, the color is a core color. Because he was saying, because he's saying before, not just that the object that has the color is not natural, the colors themselves. See, this piece, you get the Havon of it. Now let's bring it back to the Nimshul. See, the Nimshul is helping us understand. This is perfect. The Nimshul is helping us understand the Mashal, basically.
Here he says before, he says a line over here, it says, he's making a blanket statement that there's nothing today as then 2 lines later he's saying Pishtan is like that. So could you find Mitzvah something that's not that?
That's what I asked initially. I don't think he's contradicting himself. I think he's saying that, like this, real pure. Let's speak in the Nimshul. Let's speak in the Nimshul. Hold on. Let's speak in the Nimshul. Hold on. Can you see bli gvul? No. We can't say bli gvul. You can't see real pshittus. But the color white gives you, in the world of sight, you can have a sense of pshittus. That's what the point is. That's what we're speaking also in the previous chapter. Chochmah. What was he saying with Chochmah? It's not talking about Keseh. We're talking about it's between Ayin and Yesh. That's why it's so vital. It's a very fascinating understanding. In other words, he's saying in existence, he's giving you a taste of something that's beyond existence. So if white was like red and blue, you wouldn't have it. Red and blue is basically existence. And existence is diverse. But there's a natural color. God planted into existence a taste of something that's pashut. So if you want real pshitas mamish, you can't. There's no lovin like that. That's correct. I think pishtan is the example of the most white or clear that you can find in existence. I think that's what he's saying here. That's what he said.
The blanket statement that he says about them is,
you didn't hear what I just said.
Yeah, no, I know.
Pishtan is a blank statement remain. Not close. The whole piece is, Lavan is not a davar nesef, no matter how you twist it. That doesn't mean that you could see pure lavnunis, be'etzem. But that doesn't mean Lavan is a davar nesef. It's not a contradiction. In other words, it's not a jump from no colors to colors. There's a jump from no colors to a color that's an atzmi, a core color, to colors that are add-ons. What's wrong with that? That's a very fine way to look at it. How it works in the physical world, I got to still figure that out. And I'm saying, it seems to me, because this pishtan, see, without the parentheses, okay, yeah. No, I think I understand now what he's saying. I think Shahari on Royim is supposed to jump back to before Kamosha Be'emes. That's it. The Kamosha Be'emes, think of it as a Maimon HaMuzga. Skip the lines of Kamosha Be'emes to the word Be'etzem, those 3 lines. So, Ma Shenken Dover Alovenu Atzmi She'ena Murka B'Shum Dover. Shahari on Royim Pishtan Alovenu Ein Dugmose B'Tzev Klos Shitziva Gamkin Loven Kameo. Yeah. Those 3 lines are a Maimon HaMuzga, but it's not. Skip, you hear what I'm saying? Right. He just said all the colors themselves are murkav. They are a mixture with something. Mashenkin, Davar halovenu atzmi shein murkav b'shum davar. Now skip to Shahari on Uraim, and you'll see it reads perfectly.
What do you see?
So it doesn't contradict anything. Okay.
What do you see in Pishtan Alovan?
No, there's no white like that. Like he said, Mashenkin b'tzem, she sever love mamish kamei love and be'etzem. I'm sorry. Mashenkin davar love atzmi shein murkav b'shum davar.
That's what you see in Pishtan Alovan?
Yeah. In other words, what he's trying to say is that there's any whiteness that we create. I'm not talking about snow. I don't know about the other whiteness, but any whiteness doesn't have that type of. And I guess it's the clarity of Pishtan that he's talking about. In other words, red and blue, you have similarities, but you cannot replicate that type of Pishtan, white of Pishtan. That's what he's saying. It's a special whiteness because it's showing you lavnuna atzmis. Yet it's still not real lavnuna atzmis because that doesn't really manifest in anything. Let's put it this way: if it was true lavnuna atzmis, you wouldn't be able to see it. That's how clear it is. Real clarity should be invisible.
Totally transparent.
Huh? It's totally transparent. The fact that you see it, I think it's excellent vort. In other words, you have an example in this world of something that is completely transparent. Or clear, like crystal. You cannot see blik vul, but you could see things that are almost because they're completely transparent. Bottom line is, when something is we talked about shalei lishma. When something is colored, we all see it. Can you see true white? You see a color white. Can you see true clarity? So Pishtan is an example you could see, and probably Pishtan is the purest type of white. I would say that, yeah, based on what he's saying here, probably purer than shaleg. What's the lashon there? Kishaleg, when he says chatoim labinu kishaleg. But there's another expression where there's shaleg and pishtan. Where's it go? Atikim Yosef al Kusayu, ve'luvushayu. What's the lashon there? Ketlak chiva. That's shaleg. Aval, but it says ve'luvushayu ketlak chiva, but amar naka. Sareh amar naka, and not pure wool, not pishtan. Oh. So there it's wool and snow. I have to look this up. Listen, it's a sugya clearly. Let's we're getting somewhere. The Aveda of it is actually easier to understand than there's all these mushalim. The Aveda is very clear. Very good. Because it stems with so many vetla. The Rebbe once said in a Fabrengen, this you like. He said, Piskali kechudish hamachat. You know, the Rebbe says that God doesn't ask of someone to change his whole life in one shot. He asks Pische Kechudesh Machat. Open for me up like the eye of a needle. One corner of your life.
It's not even the eye of the
It says, and Winkel, yeah. Machat, right. Or Machat, anyway, open for me a little tip. Like what? One corner of your life, 1 second in your day, one moment. But in that second, in that moment, in that corner, nothing but God. So it's a echuzdik thing. So if a person can't do that 1 second, or one thing in life should be completely pure, that's a problem. So I'm not talking about changing your whole life. We all are living lives. We all have all kinds of colors. That's a colorless moment. You verstehst?
Did you ever said it?
Yeah, in the Fabrengen, yeah. That's what he said.
But to reach this level.
Echus. The point is that everyone has a moment of truth. There's a moment of truth. The point that he's saying, in other words, so there's this thing that in the world of colors, something that's colorless, that's very powerful. So we're having here a taste of Bligvul and Gvul. Okay, and that's why in all the colors there's a netiyah, there's a leaning to all kinds of different strange colors. In other words, you can turn them into all kinds of, when you start mixing colors, they become very interesting mixtures. Like in the color red, there's many different combinations and configurations and mixtures. And also yoruk, in green or yellow, there are many different mixtures. We got to look this up. There's Lashanas out to see, is this yellow or green? I don't even know what word to use. So we have two big things. We have here Shammai and Hillel. One says it's green, one says it's yellow. Okay, bottom line is here. Okay, if you say so. Anyway, say al yirakrak or adam dam. He said before adam dam. Where did he say that before? Adam dam. Where did he say?
Adam dam is by the tzaras.
No, in the parentheses he said. Kumeloven adam dam. That's like whitish red. Yeah. Okay, so you see many different shapes and colors, many different mixtures. That means there's differences in the color red and yellow and red, and it's mixed into them, different mixtures. Like the color of gold. It's yellowish. And it leans toward red. Like it says, what's V'yerek? V'amar azal shehurikan bezov. V'yerek means bezov.
V'yerek as chanichav means that he girded them, he armed them. V'yerek is the word like armed them. With what? So Amar azal hurikan bezov.
Who's chanichav?
Eliezer.
Where is this?
Avram.
Oh, right. In Lech Lecha. Yeah, okay, right. V'amar azal shehurikan bezov, that he armed them. That he with zav, with gold. So you see Yorek and zav. Or Pirish Rashi Kamoi Vevreiseha biyarakrik Chorutz. Yeah, Kamoi Vevreiseha biyarakrik Chorutz Shu Loshin Yorek v'neita le'edem. V'neit Odem. Odem. Kamoi Vevreiseha biyarakrik Chorutz. That what Vevreiseha, his wings biyarakrik Chorutz, that he engraved Chorutz from the word engraved. Wings that he.
About the
Shuloshin Yoruk v'neita le'adem. So Loshin Yoruk, like yellowish, and leans toward red. This is definitely yellowish.
Gold.
But
yellow with green.
Yeah, light green is yellow.
And also the egg is
The chemara chelman beitzo. Sheneita le'adem. The same also the shell.
No, it's the yellow.
Oh, the yellow of the egg.
Yellow is the egg.
Chelman of the egg yolk.
Yeah.
The yolk of the egg, sheneita le'adem, that leans toward reddish.
The
emek yoruk, yesh by admumius, and deep yellow. Deep green could be also.
No, this is something else. That's how the bait.
No, I'm going to the next step. V'yomek yoruk, and deep green or deep yellow, yesh by admumius, has red. V'emek edem, yesh by shachrus. And deep red has in it black. And in general, there has in it many different mixtures. U'mekol mokem einei pasuk mipnei sharkovi hi metulda. No, this is a halacha. Mekol mokem einei pasuk mipnei sharkovi hi metulda.
Yeah, pasuk means mixed.
Pasuk means mixed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not mixed.
What's not mixed? What's he talking about? Where's pasuk used? Mipnei sharkovi hi metulda. In other words, he's talking about the halacha, I think, where it talks about tulda is like the birth. The tulda is like not from the original object. It's from the
four things, and then the shtam shenaba. The word pasuk means mixed.
Mixed, yeah.
It's not in a few places.
pasuk means mixed, but he's saying so because the cheder has arkava. He says because the arkava is metulda. The arkava is not from the original entity; it's from its expression. I got to look this up. He says he's warning that even though it's still not, it's pasuk. It's not pasuk because the arkava is not the thing itself; it's in the product and result of it. That's because they fundamentally there are mixtures. Which of course white doesn't have.
He's saying,
yeah, right. So in other words, he's bringing additional proof that they're mukavim because you see, if they weren't initially mixtures, you couldn't mix all these colors and shapes and all these different all these different not shapes, all these different colors in them.
Why not?
Let's see. We'll see from white. You'll see why. Mashenken Gavin Lovin aim by nitius legavin zulase. Mashenken white does not have any nitius. Yes, if you mix red into white, it's no longer white. So the fact that you have, for example, but you do have, you could say there's off-white, there's white.
He's saying
that. Yeah. The only thing is there's differences in the white itself. Kamei aza kisheleg, strong like snow. Ukitzemer lovan, b'sida hechel, and like the whiteness of wool. B'sid ha'hechel, sid is linen. Sid is plaster.
Yeah.
Plaster of the what they used to.
Is this a lashon somewhere? Aza kisheleg, kitzemer lovan, b'sid ha'hechel.
Yeah.
All these lashonos, yeah.
These are four whites.
So you see, right, azad. So strong. So snow is the strongest, and wool is less, and the plaster is even less. What was the plaster made of?
Plaster is white. It's a different color.
No, I know that. But what was? So zeu dargus be'etzem halevin aval ein b'netia legaven acher. These are levels in the white itself, but they don't have a leaning toward any other color. V'hainu lefishu gaven poshet va'atzmi, because it's a seamless, it's a shapeless, simple and core color. So 1 second. So why is the different type of colors white different than, for example, the different shades of red and redder, or and then once you say when you mix white with red,
if it's lighter red,
it's not red, it's not white anymore, but it's not red either. It's whitish red. Why can't you say the same thing? How is this a proof? And like you asked the question, what makes who says it's murkav? Let's say it's an atzmi. Let's say red is an atzmi, and you can mix it with other things. What's the proof? It's a leitzach. Intuitively, it makes sense that something that is itself not. This piece needs havana. This is a piece that needs havana. Why? Why is that the case? And also the white you could mix. I guess he doesn't mean white. He means clear. But here it's already whiteness. These are shades of white for sure. Let's say you mixed. Clarity, I understand, because if white is clear, as soon as you mix it with something, okay, so then the mix takes over. Like you said before, we don't have clear the earth or something that tints the white, so it becomes the clear is no longer clear. Like let's say you took clear plastic, clear glass, and you painted it, so therefore it's not clear anymore. That I understand. I can also understand that if the thing is initially, let's say, red, he has to say it's clarity because the other colors don't have clarity. If you have a red window, now that's his bavodning that there's levels in that whiteness, but it's not combinable. I don't know. Okay, let's read on. I have to think about this. Okay, we'll stop here, actually. That's good. Daf Saivi Horav in this piece. The Mishalim are harder than the Nimshal, can I tell you? It's much easier in Aveda.
The Nimshal makes the Moshel play
I know, we said the Nimshal, yeah. Okay, so we'll stop here. We did the half of chapter 118, page 228 and 229.